The only other thing I have, I just thought it was kind of interesting, and we can link this in the description for those watching on YouTube. NASA last year, or sorry, this recently released a report for their economic impact from last year. It's called the NASA Economic Impact Report.
So good at naming. So good at
2019.
naming.
Yeah. But they're basically looking at like what NASA technologies have brought to the table in terms of economic gain. And I don't know how much of this is just kind of like justifying their existence. This is why we need to be here. But the quick and dirty, it says that in fiscal year 2019, NASA's efforts generated a total economic output of more than $64 billion, supported more than 312,000 jobs, resulted in nearly $7 billion in federal, state, and local tax revenues, and impacted all 50 states and the District of Columbia.
That old thing?
I mean, not too shabby.
Do they list specific things? I'm curious.
So they've got these maps here. This is the economic impact by state in terms of by, what is that?
Jobs, employment.
Is that jobs? Oh, employment. Yeah, employment. Sorry, I didn't see
They should show a percentage there because, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, look at California. Actually, California has the highest number.
It's also the most populous state, too.
Yeah, but I never think of like NASA facilities in California.
JPL.
Fair enough. All right.
The one that make all the things.
Shut up. So here's the economic impact per state in the thousands. So like Texas has, it's in that. This is so misleading. So it says 8,707,554 thousands of dollars.
Yeah, so it's billions.
So it's actually billions. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Let's see. So
because so
they talk about the
many
impact
things,
of the. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, we don't really. I think a lot of people, if you ask them that question, just what has NASA created that you use on a regular day basis, and it's like, the latest one that I'm really excited about are the flow batteries. So that I think you did a video on that, right? Was the video specifically on flow batteries, or was it on just all batteries? And you talked about flow.
Specifically flow batteries.
Yeah, fantastic. Really interesting stuff that could make grid scale storage, like all this kind of stuff. And apparently that was created by NASA in the 80s for some missions to have energy in space. And you're looking at it going, wow. So there's this thing that could literally change the energy infrastructure. And they just recently, within the past decade or something, made it public. They open sourced it, right? And that's why all of a sudden we see all these flow battery kind of things. But the internet, arguably, GPS, how did those satellites get there? So much of our life is actually dependent on things that are floating around in space right now. And then eventually the internet with Starlink and those things.
Yeah. I did a video way back when about NASA spin-off technologies. That's a whole other thing. You mentioned the flow batteries a second ago. And I forget exactly what it is they did, but I remember talking about this in the video, was basically cordless drills. There's something that makes cordless drills possible that we use every day. And it was first kind of done by NASA as a tool, to do repairs in space kind of thing. I mean, and there's countless examples of that.
Yeah.
It kind of bothers me when people really crap on NASA, especially with the SLS and everything. And I understand it's got its problems and whatnot, but it's like, God, the world would be such a different place if it wasn't for NASA. And we don't give them enough credit. That's just me.
Yeah, no, there's so many things because they don't have the luxury, right? So we've talked a lot about car companies and manufacturing. They don't have the luxury of going to another supplier and saying, build me this thing. So often they have to invent that thing, right? There's no other person that's there's no IKEA for a capsule, right? But now I guess with companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin and all these other ones, you're getting to see where NASA doesn't have to be the one that actually invents the things anymore.
Yeah.
But I think there are a few industries like that. There are a few industries where it's to do anything, we have to literally invent it. That's
right. Yeah.
That's not common.
And in fairness, they probably turned most of those over to contractor companies that did it. But there was not a need for that until NASA, created a need for it, and then some innovation took place, and now we all benefit from it.
And then they go, I wonder if we could take this and do this.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so, again, on the SLS and the Artemis mission that gets so much heat, this is talking specifically about that. This is very much a document from NASA saying, let us keep doing this. There's a good point to all this, but they call it the Moon to Mars thing, or M2M, the nationwide impact of it. So specifically, let's just call it the Artemis program. Supports more than 69,000 jobs. 69.
Nice.
More $14 billion in total economic output across the country. Estimated $1.5 billion in federal, state, and local tax revenues. So they're making that argument here. And there was one other thing down here. Oh, they're talking about how they helped out with COVID. They helped create some respirator technology and stuff. That then. Engineers at JPL developed a ventilator specifically for COVID-19 patients in just 37 days. Wow. And then released the design for free to manufacturers.
I really wonder that's cool, but I would love to see the data about how much of a difference any of that makes. Because I think it was Freakonomics had some people on, and they were talking about the success rate in terms of living for a person that hits a ventilator prior to COVID was 30%. If you're in bad enough shape, you need a ventilator, 30%, 70% chance you're going to die. And then with COVID, it was now 80% chance you're going to die. And you look at it, you go holy crap. So you're ventilators, yeah, but then you're also I don't, once you hit that stage, I mean, man, it's a real grim outlook already.
Yeah, I would be totally speculating to even comment on that. But I feel like by the time you get on a respirator, you're in such bad shape that it's, of course the numbers are going to be skewed toward death.
Yeah. That's the hard part with all that data. That's really, this whole pandemic thing for me has been a failure of our ability to use data. I mean, because so much of decisions are being made on things, and you look at it and you go, wait, what? Forget the science aspect of this works, this doesn't work. Just looking at the numbers, the numbers aren't even adding up right or anything, and the CDC put out the thing saying, I forget what it was 6% or 4% of deaths had no other conditions. I forget what it was. I want to say 4%. But in one of their reports, that was the one number that a bunch of people, the people calling it a hoax came out with.
That's what popped up on Facebook all of a sudden.
But the irony of all that is it's the good news is that how we're counting COVID deaths apparently is the same way we count influenza deaths. So people just dying, you have zero other symptoms and you somehow have influenza and then die is extremely rare.
Yeah.
But because it's being counted the same way, you are able to compare it, which is fantastic. In data, a lot of times that's really the big thing. Isn't necessarily that you calculate a metric the most accurate way possible. It's more important that you calculate it in a fairly representative way that is consistent. Because when you looked at COVID cases, all of a sudden overnight there was a 600% increase. It wasn't an actual 600% increase. It was that they changed how they were calculating it. So you can't compare previous to now. That's the hard part. Usually we're always trying to compare numbers. And so you have to keep the calculation of that metric consistent. Otherwise, it's not a fair comparison. So
everything about it's been chaotic and confusing. But that 5% thing you mentioned earlier, I made the point to somebody on Facebook that that by that same logic, then nobody has ever died of AIDS. Mm-hmm. Because AIDS itself is not what kills you. It's some secondary or tertiary infection that comes about because your immune system is destroyed that winds up killing you because of that.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. If you got some illness that you normally would have recovered from, but then you also get this other thing that ends, that now that you have the other thing, it ends up killing you. Yeah. Then that thing was significant enough, I think, to count it as it. Yeah. And that's kind of how it works, right?
If you've had diabetes for 30 years and then you get COVID and die, and they're like, no, it's the diabetes. It's well, he was fine with the diabetes all this time, and then this came out.
Exactly.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this clip from our show. If that's just not enough for you and you want to watch the full episode, you can go to olfpod.com/YT.
And if you want more from us, you can consider becoming a Patreon member. You'll get early access to episodes. You can join our awesome community. You can actually watch us record live and get your name in the credits by going to olfpod.com/Patreon.
So thanks everyone for watching. Check back every Friday for new clips here and new episodes on the main channel.
Thanks everybody.